Hello, everybody. It's time for another episode of the Lions Grid. This is another one of our NFL Game of the Weeks and Pick'em segment. We are your hosts, Kevin Marheine and Joe Wilmot, back here again for another installment. And you can see below us, there are some numbers there. Of course, we made our picks for the first week. So after 1 week, Joe, you're sitting there at 8-8, not a losing record, very respectable. As we mentioned last week, we were differing on 3 picks, and fortunately for myself, all 3 of those games went in my favor. So I'm boasting right now that rather impressive 11-5 record. Things could most certainly change here in week 2 because we do have, we stayed pretty similar with our picks, but there are, I believe, 4 games where we differed. So either a chance for me to, I guess there's 3 ways it could go, right? I could either increase my lead, you could close the lead, or we could split the games and stay about even. So we'll have to see how it unfolds here.
Oh, no, I'm feeling pretty good. I want to make up some ground this weekend.
You most certainly have an opportunity too. So, just for everyone's sake, we're just going to throw up here just to remind everybody. This was last week's picks. You can see the teams Joe chose. Nothing too crazy. Of course, we both went with the Browns, and they got surprised by the Titans. So, even though we both had them as winners in that game, they kind of got dressed down. But, I don't think any of us really either of us went with anything too crazy. There were some close games where we differed. But I think it should be interesting to see how things change here in week 2. And for this week, what we'll go ahead and do is we'll just run through the 16 games and who we chose in each one. And then we'll go back and highlight our games of the week. That way, I know last week we had the issue of we were talking about our games of the week and sort of gave away who we were picking before we had the chance. So let's get the picks out of the way and just run through who each of us has in this upcoming game, or these upcoming games on Sunday and Monday. So, of course, Carolina already lost to Tampa Bay, so unfortunately for us, we're both starting off with a loss here in week 2. So we got some ground to make up. But the second game of the week, the Cardinals visiting Baltimore. We're both taking Baltimore in that game. Taking a look at our Lions opening up their home stand against the Los Angeles Chargers. We both like the Lions in this game, and of course we'll talk more about that game tomorrow during our pregame episode. So if you're interested in our thoughts there, be sure to tune in tomorrow. In the Indianapolis Colts and Tennessee Titans game, we like the Titans at home over the Colts. And here comes the first game where we differ, Joe. We have the San Francisco 49ers traveling to Cincinnati. You're going with the 49ers. I'm going with Andy Dalton and the Bengals, even though I've said time and again, stay away from the Bengals. I'm sticking my neck out there with them one last time. Taking a look at the Jaguars and Texans. We both like the Texans in that matchup. In the game between the Vikings and the Packers, we're split here again. You're going with the Vikings. I'm going with the Packers at home. Both going with the Cowboys to win on the road at Washington. Split once again here with the Seahawks, who will be traveling to play Pittsburgh. You're going with the Seahawks. I'm going with Pittsburgh. Both decided that the Buffalo Bills will win the battle for New York and beat the Giants at home this weekend, making them the New York team to beat both the Jets and the Giants and assert dominance. We both like the New England Patriots to beat Miami. And then we got the Chiefs, both over the Raiders. Both like the Saints against the Rams. We're doubling down. We did this last week, and it didn't work out for us, going with the Bears to win. Of course, they're playing the Broncos this week, so not the Packers. A chance there for them to redeem themselves in our pick-em eyes. We're split here. You're going with the Eagles, who are traveling to Atlanta to take on the Falcons for Sunday Night Football. And then for the Monday Night Football game, similar story with the Bears. We're both doubling down, going with the Browns to make up for their disappointment against the Titans and get that win on Monday night against the Jets. So those are our picks for this week. Like I said, they're the games where we differ. You're going with the Vikings. I'm going with the Packers in that matchup. You're going with the Eagles. I'm going with the Falcons. You're going with the Seahawks. I'm going with the Steelers. And then you're going with the Niners, and I'm going to go with the Bengals. So that's where this week's lead is going to be decided with who comes out ahead. And Joe, let's toss it over to your pick for game of the week. Let's toss it up here. You're picking that 1 o'clock showdown between the Minnesota Vikings and the Green Bay Packers. Joe, why don't you tell us a little bit about this game and what you're going to be looking for between these two NFC North rivals who our Detroit Lions are going to be seeing here in a matter of weeks?
Well, I just think that Minnesota opened up their season so assertively and so effectively on offense and defense that they're riding high on energy, on adrenaline, and some confidence going into this game against Green Bay, knowing that Green Bay played a game in which they beat the last year NFC North division winners. The Chicago Bears started off the season with a win, but they only put up 10 points. Mm-hmm. And Aaron Rodgers really only had one drive that was really effective. So I think that a complete game by the Vikings is good to go and build off of going into week 2 against Green Bay, where you saw some problems from Green Bay on offense, not typically on defense, but I think that Minnesota's offense is going to be effective against this defense, more so than the Bears, because they have a few more playmakers. So I just think that Minnesota is the more well-rounded team. I could very well be proven wrong based upon another week in the system, another way to correct some flaws that Green Bay had in week 1. So, it's going to be a competitive game, no doubt. It's for the lead in the NFC North. And I think the Vikings are going to come out on top because I think that they're playing good football after week 1.
Yeah, certainly we don't have a big sample of size for either of these two teams, but definitely was impressed with what Minnesota did on the defensive side of things. Delvin Cook also looked good running the ball for them, and of course, as you mentioned, they have a ton of playmakers between Kyle Rudolph, the tight end. They have Stephon Diggs, Adam Thielen. The big question for Minnesota coming into the season is, what is Kirk Cousins going to be able to do to get them to that next level? Because everything else from their defense to their skill positions, they seem to be running pretty well. So that's sort of the thing that's going to get them over the hump to compete for an NFC title and a chance to represent the NFC in the Super Bowl. So definitely don't hate the pick going with the Vikings over the Packers. It's going to be interesting to see what happens there. Again, I think Kirk Cousins is going to be the guy who decides the outcome there, because if he has another good game where he just, in that game last week against the Falcons, their defense forced turnovers, and then he scored the points that he was supposed to score. Like, he didn't come out and have a dominant game at quarterback, but he took care of the ball. He got the offense to get points when they should, and that's a recipe to win games. So if he does that against the Packers and that defense can force Aaron Rodgers to make some turnovers and some mistakes, I certainly am in your camp that the Vikings can easily pull out a win. But the reason for me going with the Packers here, I just like I am a fan of the Packers, so that might be blinding me a little bit. But I do like the chance for the Packers. It's a great opportunity, right? Not only to start off the season 2-0, but to start off the season 2-0 in your division. That would be pretty nice. That would be pretty nice for this 2019 campaign. I was really impressed with the Green Bay's defense last week. They shut down Mitchell Trubisky. He was another quarterback who has kind of struggled a little bit and is going to be the key to unlocking the Bears' full potential. So maybe that defense can cause some issues for Kirk Cousins. We'll have to see. And then, definitely some question marks about what we're going to see out of Aaron Rodgers in that new offense with head coach Matt LaFleur. It definitely didn't set the world on fire in week 1, so they're going up against another tough defense here in week 2. We'll have to see what they can do, but I am going to stick with my Packers pick in that game. But certainly this will be one of those games that'll help decide who comes out on top here in week 2. And funny enough, if we take a look at my game of the week, we have the Seahawks and the Steelers. So this is another game, Joe, where we're on opposing sides. I'm taking the home team, interestingly enough, in both of these matchups, and you're going with the away team. This should be a pretty good game, right? It's, again, another one of the games in the 1 o'clock slot, so certainly you want to be at your TV when Sunday football kicks off, because not only are the Lions playing, but again, our two games of the weeks kick off at that same time. But Ben Roethlisberger and the Steelers are coming off a game against the Patriots on Sunday Night Football where they were sort of embarrassed. Uh, they got completely manhandled in that game, so I'm expecting them to come out here with a passion in week 2 to show, hey, no, what happened against the Patriots, only they can do that sort of thing to us and get back on track here against the Seahawks. The Seahawks, of course, are a pretty good team. Obviously, things have changed for the Seahawks. You know, they used to be the Legion of Doom, or the Legion of Boom back there. That sort of changed. They don't have as quite impressive of a secondary, but they still have some very good pieces. Obviously, they traded Tennessee for Jadeveon Clowney. Frank Clark's gone, but he's their new big pass rusher. They still have a lot of talent on defense, even though they're not the same team they were when they made their Super Bowl runs. And Russell Wilson gets Tyler Lockett back. So there's plenty of interesting things going to be happening in this game. I like the Steelers at home to rebound after what was a disappointing week 1. What's making you go with the Seahawks in this matchup, Joe?
I think I picked the Seahawks to win their division. Mm-hmm. And I think that just based upon performance, Pete Carroll's offense and Pete Carroll's coach teams, they generally have a winning record. I know Mike Tomlin, he's generally got a winning record as well. I just think that after watching a little bit of the Seahawks and, more so of the Steelers, I just get the vibe that right now, going into week 2, I know the Steelers are at home, but I think the better team is the Seahawks. Mm-hmm. And, I don't know if that James Conner is playing in the game. So that might be an area that they have to substitute in somebody who doesn't normally see a lot of playing time. But I think generally what you see out of Seattle's defense is they're explosive and they're fairly effective. And generally what you see out of the offense is they produce points more consistently than on what we've seen from the Steelers. And we really don't know what to expect from the Steelers this season after just one game we saw against the Patriots, with them losing key components. Antonio Brown. I know Le'Veon Bell sat out all last season, but you have the running back that's going to miss this week as well for the Steelers. So I just think that Ben Roethlisberger's getting up there in age. He doesn't have as much ability to be as an effective quarterback as he might have had in the past due to the talent around him. So I'm just feeling good about Seattle.
Yeah, and I do actually think James Conner will be a go here for week 2 for the Steelers. I think he was dealing with we were talking when we were doing the, I can't remember if it was the injury episode or the fantasy football episode from earlier this week. But I know he was one of the guys when we were talking about players who were dealing with those illnesses. He was one of the guys there that was missing practice due to an illness. My understanding, though, is he should be good to go for the game against Seattle. So, but still, I mean, even if he does play, obviously if he's dealing with an illness, he might not be at 100%. Depending on what the illness was, and I didn't see anything specifically about what he was dealing with. But if he was dealing with the flu or something like that, dehydration could be an issue for him throughout the course of the game. So it could potentially get him to miss some snaps and things like that. So certainly something to keep in mind. And as you pointed out, Joe, I think the Seahawks and the Steelers, if you're a fan of either of those two teams, you've been sort of lucky because obviously they haven't had the same success that the Patriots have had over the last 10 years, but these have been two teams that have been, up there towards the top of their respective divisions and have been there competing. So you've been sort of lucky if you're a fan of either of these two teams. You've been treated to some really good football, and them going head-to-head here this Sunday should be a pretty good game because, again, both Pete Carroll, Mike Tomlin, great coaches. I think they both do have winning records, so it'll be interesting to see what happens when these two teams meet head-to-head. Well, as I mentioned, we will be coming back again tomorrow doing an episode taking a look at the Lions matchup with the Chargers. Of course, we both picked the Lions today over the Chargers in that, so we'll tell you a little bit more about why we like the Lions in the game, and also just break down some of the things you might want to keep an eye on as the Lions open up the regular season for at home. You know, they got last week on the road against the Cardinals. This will be the first game at Ford Field, so exciting to have football back in the D. And thank you for the nice note there, Kartik. Happy to help you out and give you some info there about fantasy football and the NFL in general. Glad you're tuning in. And speaking of that, if you're like Kartik and you enjoy the show, please do help the channel grow. A like on the video is great. If you like Kartik, want to rely on us as a way to stay up to date with some of the things happening in the NFL, please consider hitting that subscribe button. We do have a goal of reaching 100 subscribers so we can get a custom YouTube URL. We're making good progress that way, but that's one of the best ways you can help support us at the moment is just hit that subscribe button. And then if you want to be kept alert for when our latest videos are going live, like tomorrow afternoon before the game kicks off, if you want to get that notification for when we're kicking off the pregame episode, make sure you ring that bell, and YouTube will either send you an alert to your desktop or your mobile device, and you can come and see us tomorrow when we talk about the game. Just want to thank everybody for tuning in this evening. We'll take a look at the results of this Pick'em episode next week when we do Week 3's Pick'em, but Joe, it's obviously 4 games separate or different this week, so we'll have to see what happens. Got that 3-game lead at the moment, but certainly, especially with me picking the Bengals a game, which I did it and I still don't like it. We'll have to see, but it'll be interesting to see how the records change here, because with 4 games this week, certainly some room for you to make up ground or me to distance myself. We'll have to see how everything shakes out here. All right. Again, thanks for tuning in, everybody, and we will catch you tomorrow morning. The game is at 1 o'clock, of course, for the Lions, so we'll do a kickoff show probably around 12 p.m. That'd be noon for all of you, just so we can get that in before the game. And if you're interested in seeing our thoughts on the matchup tomorrow between the Chargers and the Lions, please tune in then. We'll catch you during the next video.